All right, we are live. It's been a long time. Just gonna check the audio quality here. Test, test. All right, we sound pretty good. All right, I'm gonna have a lot of people to trickle in. I'm happy to be back. If you're a new viewer and you're trickling in, thank you so much for coming through. Thank you so much for subscribing. I know it's been a little bit since I put out some content lately, but I want to thank every single one of you guys for sticking along with me during my journey. It's been a very eventful summer, full of research, and we can talk about that in a little bit once more people start trickling in. But I just want to say, yeah, I'm happy to be producing content again. I'm happy to be back and being able to live stream, answer some questions. I really had this motivation to live stream this week based on a conversation I was having with one of my mentees, and he was kind of getting into the ropes of medical school and wanted to start getting involved with research again, or getting involved with research in medical school. And yeah, so we had a conversation about medical school. We had a conversation about research, and I was just like, you know what, I really want to talk about research on my medical school YouTube channel. I wanted to kind of give you guys the content that I've been pushing off for a little bit, since I have been pushing off the topic of research and talking to you guys about research, because I've been working on a lot of it myself. So I'm just going to let some people trickle in here, and once we have some people in the chat, then we will get started. So just give me a few minutes. What sparked my interest in research? That's a good question. So, as far as my spark for research in general, I didn't always want to do research. I didn't always have this passion for research. Initially, when I was in pre-med, I wanted to do research for the same reason that many want to do research, is because you kind of have to get into medical school. A lot of medical schools require it these days, or a lot of medical students that are getting accepted do have research, so essentially a requirement. And when I started off, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do. I asked myself, okay, what would I be interested in researching more about? So that at that time it was neurobiology, it was um, neuroscience. I had a little bit of interest in like maybe exercise science and different things like that. But at my school, I was a neurobiology major and a physiology major, so that's kind of what I wanted to do research in. So at that time, a lot of PIs and some of my teachers were studying spinal cord injuries or walking rehabilitation, and I really got lucky. I met this guy in the parking lot this one time on the way to my car, and we had a conversation. He told me, "Hey man, if you want to get into research, here's some people that you could reach out to," and just send like 15 to 20 emails, cold emails to a bunch of different PIs. Tell them that you're interested in their work, and when you send out those emails, follow up on them and have meetings, sit down with people. And that's essentially what I did. And through a bunch of different emails, a bunch of different meetings I had, some rejections, some not, I was able to find my PI, and we hit it off ever since then. But my initial spark was because kind of the interest of, hey, you have to do research because you have to do it to get into medical school. But eventually, when I grew an interest in it, was kind of the idea of, hey, I'm doing something that can help make medicine better. I'm doing something that could help push medicine forward. With my small efforts, I could contribute to science, and that's kind of what sparked my passion for it. How many research projects and or publications do you think are needed to be competitive for an orthopedic residency program? Yeah, so this is a question that I ask myself many times, because I'm interested in going into orthopedic surgery, and that's my top specialty at this time. And one of the things, and the common I guess I guess one of the most common just conceptions about orthopedics is that you have to have a lot of research, and to be competitive for orthopedic residency, you have to have a lot of research. You have to be doing research for a long time. And I've kind of found that the case when I talk to different specialty, when I talk to my mentors that are either orthopedic surgeons or interns right now, or applying to orthopedic surgery, they all say research is so important. And so for me, I don't know the exact number of publications that you need, but a lot of people say, the sweet spot is kind of like 10 research publications. They actually did a study recently. I think it was published either last year or a couple years ago, where they looked at students that had that were accepted into orthopedic surgery residency, and I think the average was about 10 research publications from a specific school. That's a good question. But I think it's just as many as you could get. The more research you have, the more interest, and it also depends on the program, because not every program likes or cares about research that much. But I think if you're just talking about a general academic practice, usually it's a lot of publications where you're looking at, like, 10 papers is like, okay, if you have 10 papers, you're almost guaranteed or have a high likelihood of getting into somewhere that's highly competitive, a top specialty program. How do you find a good PI? Another good question. So when it comes to finding a good PI, I think partially it's luck, partially it is putting yourself out there. So when I found my first good research PI as an undergrad, I was didn't really know what I was looking for. I didn't really know what a good PI was. I pretty much was just looking for an opportunity. And what I found from that opportunity was a good PI was somebody that is going to be dedicated to you as a student, allow you to grow over time, somebody that's going to allow you to flourish in your role, give you responsibilities, and sees when you're doing that job well, gives you more responsibilities and allows you to grow in your position. I think that's one of the best things I've experienced when it comes to good PIs, but a lot of it's just kind of luck of the draw. I think you need to shoot your shot, understand that you have to give it your honest try. I always tell people that when I was first starting off in research, I could have easily quit because I was like, why am I doing this mundane data collection? It's really boring. It's really mindless. It's really repetitive. But if you stay at that mindset of just like completing a task of data collection, you'll never grow to the mindset of scientific thinking. And I think by asking myself all these different questions in my research PI, encouraging that behavior and working with me, I think that was one of the best things I could have asked for as far as a good PI. But you really just have to give it your honest try, give yourself a few months of giving your best shot at a research position, see how your PI is. Obviously, if you're at a research position and it's 6 months to a year and you haven't improved in your role at all and you've been putting in good work, then it might be time to try to find somebody else. But I think that one of the biggest things as far as finding a good PI is just shooting your shot, and then actually going to something that you enjoy, because you might know them from previous research, you might know them from doing your Googles, and you might hit it off. So I think that's one of the biggest things. What's going on, Claude? Welcome to the stream, my man. Do you need research publications in the specialty you want to match into, or does it not matter? Yeah, that was kind of similar to the question that was asked before, and I think that it's tough because not every so I want to go into orthopedics, and not every orthopedic specialty or not every orthopedic residency program wants to have somebody that's like super gung-ho about research. Not everybody wants somebody with 10 plus publications and all these posters and podium. Every residency program has their own interests and desires as far as what they want their applicants to look like. If you're applying to Harvard, if you're applying to HSS, Mayo Clinic, all these places that pump out research at an astronomical rate, Jefferson, Rothman, those places that are going to want somebody that wants to produce a lot of research. So in that case, if you want to match there, then the answer is yes. You have to have a lot of publications. You have to have a strong interest in research. You have to be able to talk about your research and all those different things. But if you want to apply to, and if you want to apply to another program that may not appreciate research, or not appreciate, but may not desire an applicant that has tons and tons of publications, you may only need a few. You may only need 3 or 4 publications, or 2 or 3 publications. But again, that depends on the residency program itself and what their desires are. But orthopedics being so competitive now, and now it's probably going to be even more competitive because step 1 is pass fail. and you're going to have more and more people applying into the subspecialty. That means that there has to be another way that you have to differentiate yourself, and that's probably going to be step 2, as well as research publications. So, the minimum might go up. The minimum might have been 2 or 3. You might need to have 4 or 5 now, or 5 or 6, to really be a standout applicant. But yeah, I mean, we could talk. I mean, we've talked about this on the side, and I could go into it a little bit for everybody else that's going to be watching the video. But I advise against publication hunting and just trying to find as many publications as possible. I think there's a good balance between that and doing good research. I think when you're talking about being a medical student and trying to go into a competitive specialty, obviously you have to try to hop on as many projects as possible so you get your name on as many things as possible. But I think that when it comes to learning how to do proper research, it's important to understand the steps of doing proper research. Learn how to do research first, learn what good research is, understand what the research is in your subspecialty of interest or the different field of medicine that you're working in. And then from there you can branch out and start growing. But I think it's important to do good research first, understand what good research is, build your skills in research, and then start worrying about the numbers and inflating a little bit. What are your recommendations for starting research as a pre-med? Yeah, my recommendation is pretty much to do what I did. I think there's a few different things that you can do, and I actually took some notes on some things. So a few things you can do. For my story, it's cold calling or cold emailing a bunch of different professors that you have interest in based on their research, their work. You could look up different faculty members in different fields in your school. So if you're interested in like cancer biology, if you're interested in neurobiology, you could look up the faculty in those fields. They're most likely going to be doing research at your undergrad or at some lab or some facility, and then you email them saying that you're interested in them, or you email them, say, hey, I'm really interested in your research. Can we speak more about it? Can we sit down? People love talking about themselves and their research and the work that they do. So the opportunity to sit down and discuss with them, I think, is a golden opportunity for you to see if you could get in their lab and learn more. You could ask a professor if you're getting taught by a professor and they're really engaging, and you go up to them after class and you want to learn more about their research and have a meeting. Again, prepare for that meeting, do well, and it has a good chance of you potentially working with them in the future. You could attend a research panel. So when I was an undergrad, I even hosted some myself in my pre-med society. There's different clubs and organizations that host research panels. Look for them on your local bulletin board or whatever the case may be, and attend those and speak to those PIs if they're interesting to you, or speak to the students. You could always get a student to potentially recommend you. I recommended a few of my friends to my research lab, got them involved, and they did great work, and they were able to get a great experience in research through asking a friend and getting a good recommendation. So those are some ways. You could do a summer research program. There's a lot of summer research programs that require zero experience and just interest in research, and you could always do something like that. And I think that that's a great way to learn more about research through that experience. But those are some ways to get involved. And obviously, when you're doing research as an undergrad, the goal shouldn't be to try to get as many publications as possible. It should just be to figure out, all right, how can I dabble into some of this field that I might be potentially interested in? How can I learn more about research in this field and dive deeper into a potential class that you're interested in? Again, focus on building that skill, and then focus following that on publications, producing research, and stuff like that. So I guess I should have worded it differently. I meant, if you want to match into ortho, does all your research have to be in ortho? Yeah, that's a good question. I recently had sat in on a talk from a Harvard professor, and he was talking about matching into orthopedics and building a competitive portfolio for orthopedics. And I don't believe when somebody asked that question, I don't think he said that you have to do research in orthopedics to match into orthopedics. Again, it depends on the program. Let's say you're competing with somebody for a top residency program, and they have all this orthopedic research, and they're able to talk about it in an advanced way, and they're trying to go into orthopedics. They're going to look naturally better and more suited. They're going to look like they have higher interest in the field because of the specific research that they did. versus if you did all cardiology research and then you made a last minute change to orthopedics. It may be something that they might naturally just question. Okay, you did all this cardio. What made you go into orthopedics? And if you have a valid answer for that, that's fine. I assume that you probably would be looked on at the same level as somebody else, but it's hard to say. I'm sure that you could do research in other fields and be just fine. I did research in gait rehabilitation and in undergrad, and I don't think that's going to be looked down upon. I did research in hand surgery. Let's say I want to, let's say I do research in hand surgery or something else, and I want to go into change my mind. I want to go into joint surgery or spine surgery, whatever. Like, I don't think they're going to look at that and say, "Oh, you did all this hand research. You're not going to be competitive for our joints fellowship." It really depends on your genuine interest, and if you're able to have genuine interest, I think that all that matters. It's a good question though, and that's something I think about as well. How do you balance research projects and studying as a med student? Yeah, that's a good question. I think as a first year, one of the biggest things that I wanted to focus on was how can I get my knowledge base about how to study, how to get everything in order, like how can I be as effective as a medical student as possible so I can make space and make time for the things that I want to do, like research, extracurricular activities, taking care of myself, going to the gym, spending time with friends and family. So that whole balance was the challenge of first year. That was the struggle of first year, trying to figure out how to maximize my study schedule and my study practices so that I can incorporate research. But I think it's a balance that goes student to student. For me, I really enjoy research. I really like it. So it's something that I can dedicate it like 2 days in the weekend to, or most of my weekend to doing research projects or working on research or doing literature reviews and different things like that. Earlier this morning, today I dedicated pretty much the whole day to relaxing and doing research. And yesterday I was doing research. So a lot of it is based on my personal week, how my week is going. Sometimes if I'm having a light week, if I want to change up my pace a little bit and I've just been studying, I've been bored, I want to switch it up, I'll work on some research during the week. But I think it's all about your personal preferences and understanding where those ebbs and flows in your schedule are, and then working from it with that. There's ebbs and flows in research as well. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed and I have a lot going on, and there's sometimes where it's dull or boring and I don't have that much going on and I can focus specifically on medical school stuff. The same thing goes vice versa. So I think it's all about just making an effort to find that balance and figure out where your interest is as far as research, and then putting your level of dedication accompanying that. So I think that's probably the best way I could describe it. It's a hard balance, but I always prioritize medical school stuff first, and then incorporate as much research as I'm being demanded at the time and what I want to do. All right, so I've written down some things. Yeah, keep asking questions in the chat if you have more questions. If you're just coming in, popping in, and you have a question, make sure you write it in the chat, and I can answer it for you. I'll be answering all questions about just like research, how to get involved, how to get publications, how to improve your research skills, what things are important as far as pre-med, medical school, etc. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. I also have some other stuff here that we could just talk about in general that I have written down about getting published, just some general advice and stuff like that as well. Do you have any recommendations for getting better at writing research papers? Yeah, so research papers is a tough one. I think that's something that I'm still working on, still trying to improve. I was lucky where I was able to be a clinical research coordinator at an orthopedic practice during my gap year. And during that time, I was pretty much the only staff member on the research team at that practice. It was a small practice, and I was able to learn the research process from beginning to end. And I think that's one of the most beneficial experiences I've had, because I was able to start from the very beginning, developing a research project, or developing a research question, or carrying on a previous research question that was rejected, or improving a research question that was rejected from publication. So I was able to start there. I was able to work through the data collection process, work through the data analysis process, and then write the paper. And through that and through all those experiences, I was able to learn how to write a paper, how to write it more efficiently. But still, to this day, I talk to more experienced people, fourth year medical students, research fellows that are able to write research papers in one day. It takes me an entire day just to write like an intro or a methods or a results section or a discussion section. So just being able to improve that process and speed it up, I think is something that just takes time. It takes repetition. I think the more you write, the faster you are at writing. If I take a long hiatus from writing, I am usually slower at writing when I come back. So constantly having things under your belt, which is obviously a privilege for many of us to have if you have a lot of research projects where you're able to do a lot of writing. But in general, having that repetition, having that practice is the best way to get better at writing research papers. Another thing that was always recommended to me as well was to read as much research papers as possible. So when you do a lot of reading, when you read a lot of papers, you're able to pull from different things. You're able to understand how to write different things in an organized fashion, how to write different things in a concise fashion. So you're not wasting characters, you're not wasting time doing a lot of revisions or overthinking. You're just able to write. And that just comes from reading up in the field of study that you are researching in, doing a thorough literature review before you start your research project. So even if you're a pre-med student and you're just writing up a research project and you're just writing up a research report for one of your classes, I had to do those pretty much like every week as in one of my like neurobio labs during my senior year. And you get better when you just sleep practice. You know, you're constantly practicing writing and you have to do one every week or every other week. You get better at writing research reports. Same thing goes for research papers. And again, if you understand the underlying science, if you understand the underlying concepts, if you read a lot in that area, you're going to be able to write reports faster. And I think that that's just something that comes with time and something that I'm, improving on myself. That's a good question, though. All right. So I want to talk about. I touched on it. I touched on it a little bit just now, and I touched on it a little bit in a previous question, but I want to talk about the just some of like the priorities as a beginner, what you should be looking for if you're just getting into research as a pre-med student, just getting into research as a medical student. What are some things you should be focused on, some things that you should care about when it comes to getting involved with research. I had a conversation with one of my mentees, and he told me how he looked at some other people on YouTube or looked at some other people that he admired, and he saw how many publications they had and how great they were, and he was just trying to get so many publications. And for me, I always look at it, and I've always been told, don't focus on trying to get as many publications as possible from the beginning. Focus on being a good researcher, and I want to go into some of the things that could potentially make you a good researcher from the beginning, and what you could focus on so that you can develop over time and eventually get those publications through skill. What's up, Marcus? How are you? How easy has it been to find research at your school as an MS1, especially in your field of interest? Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, one of the reasons why I kind of chose to come to my school is because of the opportunities to get involved with research. I knew that my institution was, especially in orthopedics, one that produces a lot of research, one that's known for their research. That I got this insight from my gap year clinical research position, and they know people at my institution that do research and different things like that. So it's fairly easy at my institution because we have a lot of physicians that produce a lot of research, so they're always looking for medical students, especially in spine, especially in joints research. They're always looking for a lot of medical students to help do a lot of data collection and data mining and all those stuff, all the grunt work that the physicians don't have time to do or the research fellows may not want to do. So it's fairly easy at my school. But let's say if you're at a school and my interest is in orthopedics, let's say you're at a school that doesn't have an orthopedic hospital, doesn't have an orthopedic department, it may be harder. It's definitely going to be harder. You're going to have to reach out to people individually. You're going to have to make connections and then branch out through there to find research in your specialty of interest if it's not at your home institution. So I think it depends from school to school. But I think in general, if you are interested in getting involved with research and you're in medical school, it should be it should just be a numbers game. If you reach out to a good enough amount of people, you will eventually land and fall on a project. As an M1 here, there's a whole list of kind of like a waiting list to get on research projects in orthopedics. So you pretty much just sign up for the list, and then from there you will you could follow up with them, and they'll just put you on a project after a period of time after people from the list keep going up in the query in like the waiting list. So I think for me it's been fairly easy, but I know it's not that way for everybody. But again, not to discourage, I think the best thing you could do is just shoot your shot as much as possible. Again, at my school, there's a lot of opportunity to get involved with research, but depending on how bad you want it, how many research projects you want to get on, how many publications you want to get on, that will determine, that next level then. So if I wanted to get on 5 projects in a year, it's going to take me a lot more work to get on 5 projects than to get on 1. So it all depends on your interests and kind of like what specialty you're interested. All right. So to go back on that I hope that answers your question, Marcus. So to go back on that kind of that topic of what to prioritize as a beginner, some things that I wanted to highlight, just learning how to be as good of a researcher as possible, and kind of like what does that mean? I talked on it a little bit before, just like being able to do things from the beginning to the very end. So being able to do data collection, coming up with first and foremost, coming up with a good research question and knowing what a good research question is, being able to do data collection and understanding the importance of what's important data to collect, what's not important data to collect, and that's based on reading papers in that specific field, reading similar projects, or building a skeleton from previous projects that you've read to conduct your study, and then being able to analyze that data. So a lot of people are afraid of statistics, and I was at one point too afraid of statistics. It's something that's really messy. It's something that's really confusing to a lot of people. So what I learned to do is just kind of lean into that fear, and I learned statistics. I self-taught myself how to run basic statistics. I had other people help me out on how to run basic statistics, and you could Google it. You could go through tutorials and learn how to do basic descriptive statistics, chi-squared, t-tests, and different things like that, so that you're able to run pretty basic studies and be able to perform them. And then last step is writing up the paper. So you want to practice at every single one of these stages. And unfortunately, not everybody has the opportunities, because if you're just being added to a project, you're just doing a lot of data collection for somebody, and you're not taking it to that next level, and you're not given the freedom to take it to that next level, it can be hard. And that's basically the tie between luck when it comes to research projects, and then also paving your way, trying to shoot your shot to as many people as possible, so that you're finally hit with somebody that is able to give you that opportunity that you ultimately want. So when it comes to figuring out, okay, what to do, how to build a skill, I think one of the most important and underlooked things is learning to be efficient. So if you're able to be efficient in data collection, somebody says do a project, work on something, and you're able to get it back to them fast and with good quality, I think that just sets you up to being able to get more and more research projects. Somebody told me when I first was inquiring about research when I got to medical school, somebody told me that you want to be somebody's go-to person. You want to be somebody that they can rely upon as far as giving research projects, giving things to do. So being able to do efficient and good work, I think, is one of the things that sets you up to not only learn more about research, but get more responsibility to gain those skills. And just being competent from start to finish, I think, is one of the things that it gives you leverage. It gives you autonomy. So somebody will be able to trust you in what you're doing, being able to do and produce good research, understanding that if I give a project to X person, they're going to be able to produce good research and do it well. Also helping to develop your scientific thinking skills as well. When you're able to do something and understand the different steps of the research project and research process, you're able to now think scientifically. You're able to ask critical questions and ask yourself, okay, why are we doing this? Why not do it like this? I see another researcher that's able to do it like this. How come we're doing our study like that? And having those conversations with your PI, I think, will help grow not only your research interest, but will appreciate you for asking those questions. And I think having that back and forth and coming up with ideas and discussing ideas is one of the fun parts for PIs when it comes to research. And I think one of the best parts about doing independent research and learning the skills from the beginning to the end is you could start proposing projects. You could start thinking about new ideas, having those conversations with your PI, as I just mentioned. And from that is obviously the credit and the credit that you deserve, which is like a first authorship and being able to propose projects and work on them and have the satisfaction of saying, I came up with this project, we put it out, it got published, and now people are reading it and hopefully being able to help improve medicine in some way. So I think that it's a long journey to get to that point, but if you take the time from the very beginning to say, okay, I'm going to be the best data collector possible when you first get into the lab, then you're going to keep asking the questions of, okay, why are we collecting this data and not that way, this data? How are we going to analyze the data after we collect it? Sticking around, always being in your lab, always being around people and asking them those questions and seeking the answers that you want to hear. So I think one of the biggest things when it comes to improving your research process is constantly asking those questions and then asking for more responsibility eventually can lead up to you becoming that forefront of changing medicine. It's a really, really cool feeling. What's up, Anonymous? How has medical school addressed the evolving COVID situation? That's pretty much how it's been addressed. It's just been addressed as an evolving situation. I think that when it comes to COVID, they've given us the strength and the autonomy to go and get involved with COVID as far as giving people vaccines, giving people education. I did a talk for a high school program, and it was a few of us, but we all gave a talk to a high school program about the COVID vaccine and encourage them to get involved with the vaccine and ask people why they didn't get it, how we can educate them and educate their family to eventually get the vaccine. So I think the biggest thing has been vaccine push. But as far as just limitations and stuff like that, we just follow the rules of our state. Our city pretty much said that everybody has to be in masks. So that means, my school says, we have to be in masks. But again, as far as addressing it, I think they've really empowered us to really embrace the opportunity to get involved as far as in social climate and educating patients and understanding the concept of policy and the vaccines and all these different things. They've really encouraged that kind of stuff when it comes to COVID. And this week I have to go in and actually speak to patients about their social determinants of health. And one of the things that we address in those patient visits is vaccines. So we encourage patients to get vaccines. We ask them if they've gotten vaccinated to just do our part in helping to maximize the vaccine effort. But yeah, it's constantly evolving. It's always fun. So I was actually recently asked a question about systematic reviews and clinical research. Which one should you go for? Should you do a lot of systematic reviews? Should you go for randomized control studies, double-blinded? Should you go for retrospective studies? And for those of you guys that know what those different things are, that's good. If you don't, then I'm going to explain it right now. So literature reviews and systematic reviews are essentially where you have a question and you're asking yourself a question based on, and you want to answer the question based on the literature that's currently out there. So let's say you say, I want to know what surgeries have the best outcomes compared to, let's say you're comparing surgery A and surgery B, which one has the best outcomes in a certain patient population. So in a systematic review, in a literature review, you pretty much will just search, do a PubMed search or a Scopus search or a Google Scholar search, and you'll go through and based on certain search terms, find a whole list of studies, identify which studies fit your criteria of what you're looking for, and then you pretty much go through those studies and write up the findings of those studies and summarize them into a paper. And that paper allows you to understand what are the strengths and the weaknesses of the current body of literature and the current understanding of that research question. And that can inspire you to do future studies. That can inspire and give people information about what is currently out there and what's our current understanding. So there's value in systematic reviews. There's value in meta-analyses. I wrote one myself this year, and we're working on trying to get it in a published form. But there's value in that, but it does take time. It is something that is a taxing, I guess, situation, because you have to go through a lot of papers, you have to do a lot of reading, and you have to do a lot of writing if you're ended up writing up the paper. So that's a taxing process, but you learn a lot about the field, and again, it can help you inspire future studies and future practice changes based on that information. So it's still valuable. Then, like prospective, double-blinded, clinical trials are the highest level of quality of research, and those are projects that require funding most of the time. They require a lot of time. Usually, it's like 2-year follow-up or a minimum 1-year follow-up, and you want to figure out a research question. So those can take time. So if you're in a situation where time is kind of money and you're looking for as many publications as possible, maybe that might not be the realm to go down if you're trying to make that your number one priority. And then there's also retrospective, like clinical studies, where you have pretty much going back in time and looking at the current patients that have already been operated on or treated, and you're trying to see if there's any trends or any outcomes that are significant based on patients that have been treated in the past. And those are studies that you could easily do a lot quicker because you're just going through the charts. You could do a quick analysis on it, and it's a lot faster to produce, but also it's lower quality research, quote unquote, lower quality, because it's looking at patients in the past, and there's a lot of variables that can influence the quality of that outcome and the quality of what your conclusion is. So a lot of the times, first year medical students or undergrad students might get stuck doing monotonous data collection for somebody, or they might end up doing like a literature review or systematic review. But whatever you do, take pride in it and appreciate it, because that project can ultimately lead to a stepping stone for you to do something else or build a connection or be with somebody long term. So again, I think that in my personal experience, I've been doing predominantly retrospective studies. I've done one systematic review, but majority of my studies have been retrospective studies because they are just a lot faster. And again, if you do something well the first time, somebody has more to offer, they're going to keep coming back to you for more and more. So I think that's kind of the tools of the trade and the tricks of the trade. Try to find a balance of like high evidence studies, maybe like a clinical trial. If you're able to get on one, that's great. But at the same time, try to find some things that are constantly flowing, like systematic reviews, or because you can write a systematic review on anything as long as the question hasn't been answered, and then going back in the patient charts and doing retrospective studies are also helpful. What's the biggest thing you learned in the first year of med school that you're applying in the second year, study-wise or material-wise? Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't really even reflected on that, so I guess it's a good time. The biggest thing that I learned in my first year that I'm applying in the second year, I think one of the biggest things that I learned in my first year is just knowing and having the confidence that I can succeed on tests, succeed in the medical school curriculum, do what I have to do, and knowing that I am able to pass a test, do well, be happy with myself. I think that's one of the biggest things that I learned in the first year, because it lays a blueprint for the future, right? So now as the second year, I'm not as stressed out because I know, okay, I know what I have to do. I know the steps. I know the work that I have to put in order to get this grade on an exam. And knowing that I have that skill set and knowing I have that capability is a huge relief, because all I have to do is just tap into what I did before, and then it will allow me to be successful on the exam. So I'm not as stressed out. I'm not as worried about trying to get as much studying in as possible every single day, because if I don't, then I'm not going to do well on the exams. I know what it takes to do well, so that I think helps give me a lot of relief and a lot of, I guess, just ability to do whatever else I want to do as far as research, extracurricular activities, just relaxing more, having less stress. So because of that, I've been able to add in a lot of more research and carry a lot of research from the summer into this first year. So I've been able to do a lot of research projects, do a lot more writing, a lot more other things, because I'm able to take a step back and say, okay, I don't need to go 100 miles an hour when it comes to studying. I don't need to do 100 hours a week of studying to get my result. I know that if I hit X amount of hours per week, or if I know if I do this many questions before my exam, I'm going to be in good shape. So I think that's one of the biggest relieving things that I learned from my first year. But I think that's probably the best one. So if I have any advice for first years and you guys are coming up on your first exam, or you're coming up on your first quiz, or doing whatever the case may be, I would say figure out your study strategy. Use the first semester, first few exams to get yourself right. And then once you get yourself in a comfortable position, just remodel that and redo it over and over. Once you see that you're able to do it over and over and with success, then it's like, okay, I can do this now. I know what I have to do. You could take a step back in that second year, fill in your life with other things that you might have been neglecting in that first year, and then hit the ground running and still be successful. So I think that's one of the best things that I learned, just being able to know that I'm capable, and then adding in other things into my schedule and my life to be able to give myself more of a balanced life and give myself more excitement with less stress. So that's a great question. Yeah, I haven't really reflected on that much. Material wise, material is a material. We a lot of stuff you see over and over again, and I don't think it helps. It helps seeing it over and over again, and you just naturally get smarter with more repetition and stuff. But I think studying wise, I think knowing that I'm able to complete my task and be able to study properly is a huge sigh of relief. All right. So I want to end off this stream. I want to give just some words of advice in general about research for anybody that's watching back on this stream, that wants to play it back and wants to not able to catch this stream and wants to learn still from some of my experiences. I have a list here of just some words of advice that I want to give to all of you. And again, if you have any questions, if you guys are popping in right now, and you have any questions about specific things, I'm happy to answer those questions, because I want to be able to give you guys that one-on-one time to be able to answer your questions. Yeshua, thank you for joining the stream. How many research do you think I need for my med school application? Can you clarify what you mean by that? Like research hours? Are you talking about publications? Are you talking about years of experience? Can you explain what you mean by how many research? If you can, that would be great. Publications? I don't really think you need many. I don't remember what or how many publications I had when I was applying to medical school. I was able to receive a few publications during my gap year because I was working in orthopedics, and they publish a lot of research. But before that, I don't think I had many publications. I think I had a textbook chapter, but again, I don't think it weighed that much in my application process. I think that what weighs more is if you did a lot of hours in research, if you spent like 2 years in a research lab and you have posters, or you might have a poster presentation, or as an author on an oral presentation or something like that. I think showing that you have dedication to it is more, it may be just as valuable as having a publication. I don't think they're looking for students that have publications per se. I think that's more of a orthopedic that's more of a residency thing when it comes down to how many publications you have. But as far as getting into medical school, I think that probably like 90% of people that are getting into medical school have research but may not have publications before getting here. So I wouldn't stress too much about research publications. I would just focus on getting involved with research, finding something that you're passionate about, that you can speak about and that you enjoy, and then going from there. If you get publications, you get publications, but I don't think you necessarily need publications for your medical school application. Yeah, I think that if you want to stand out, it might be beneficial, but I don't think that you necessarily need it to get into a good medical school. I hope that answers your question. All right, so just some lasting words of advice when it comes to research. First thing I want to say is try to read weekly, if not every day, every other day, if you can, in the field that you're interested in. So if you're a pre-med student and you're in a cancer biology lab, try to find a popular cancer biology research journal and try to read different publications from that area every single day. I mentioned this earlier. Reading will help you with writing faster. It will help you with research writing. It'll help you with understanding the current state of research to potentially maybe proposed projects. But again, having that knowledge and testing yourself and pushing yourself to think scientifically and ask yourself why they and critically think these publications and say why are they doing this? Why is it important? It helps grow your mind. It helps you improve your research skills. Again, developing basic skills in data analysis, stats, writing, practice writing when you're doing literature review. So let's say a PI asks you to do a literature review. Practice writing up a little paper, a little piece, a few paragraphs, 300 words based on what you found, and practice writing from that. And that's an introduction. That's a discussion section. Different things like that you can do on your own without somebody telling you to do it, and you could learn a lot from writing up literature reviews. The third thing is do good work and do it fast. So not only does it show that you're interested in the research process if you do good work and you do it fast, but it shows that dedication, and they're more likely to go to you again because you do something and you're very productive. So yeah. Jen Rain 11, thanks for joining. While applying to medical school, is a good idea to find a potential research mentor to conduct research with for non-MD PhD programs. I think it's huge. Probably one of my best letters of recommendation for medical school most likely came from my research mentor, who I worked with for nearly two years at the point that I was applying to research. So I had a relationship with her for 2 years, and I learned so much about the research process. I learned so much from her. She gave me so much opportunity to grow as a person, and she really watched me going from just collecting data to thinking about different research ideas and conducting research on my own and screening patients and screening participants and working with them and writing papers. So she was able to guide me through the entire thing, and she watched me grow, and I learned a lot from that process. So finding a good research mentor can be very, very critical. And another thing that she helped me do was find a research or solidify a job opportunity in research. So let's say you take a year off after undergrad and you're going into your gap year and you're looking for a research position. If you had research as an undergrad, you now have a strong letter of recommendation from somebody that knows you very well and can vouch for your abilities to conduct research at that level. So she helped give me a strong letter of recommendation that spoke very highly of me. And I heard about what she had wrote about me in my interview for my clinical research job during my gap year. And from that job, I was able to now get connections at my current institution, at my current medical school, because of connections and mentoring and different things like that. So finding a mentor, finding a good research mentor is so important. I think it's one of the best opportunities because it's a long-term relationship a lot of the times, and you get to work with somebody over a long period of time and learn about them. They learn about you, and you can bounce ideas off of them and build a actual relationship and a mentorship, mentor-mentee relationship through that. So I think that that's one of the best ways you can do it, especially as an undergrad. So highly recommend a research mentor. Even if you're not going into an MD PhD program, they could still write great letters of recommendation, and it weighs a ton when it comes to applying to medical school. The more people that can say good things about you, the better, right? So continuing on, just like advice in general, committing yourself when it comes to research, especially as a pre-med. Don't take like 20 credits and then try to do a research lab. I think the best thing. Oh, let me see here. Perhaps my question wasn't clear. I want to know whether there's any level of advantage to find a particular research mentor in a medical school as an applicant. Hmm. Oh, I see. So let me make sure that I am understanding. So you feel you're asking if it's a good idea to get involved with a research mentor at a potential school, a school that you're interested in applying to. Currently engaging with research, so I'm more curious about whether I should find professors in a specific medical school that I want to conduct research with as a medical student. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what your stage is. Let's say your stage right now is you've been accepted to a school. I mean, it's August, so that's probably not the case. But let's say you're applying to medical schools right now, and it's August, and you're trying to look for potential research opportunities. I don't know if it's a good idea unless you're specifically interested in a specific lab or a specific mentor, a specific research program because of a specific person and not necessarily using it to leverage you getting into medical school. I would say go for it, but I think it's chancy to do research just for the sake of trying to use that as leverage to get into a specific medical school. Because of that one reason. But if you've already been accepted to a medical school and you're just waiting and you're just chilling right now, yeah, of course, like try your best to make connections at the place you're about to go to, and use that as an opportunity to learn from people that are actually at that institution that you'll be at. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, but I think that if you're just trying to use research to leverage it to be able to get into a school or to say, hey, I'm doing research with XYZ at your school and make it a good talking point just for the sake of that, and you have no genuine interest in that person's lab or that person's work, or maybe you're somewhat interested in it but you're still trying to use it as a chess piece, I would kind of shy away from that because I don't think it's that important. I didn't do research at my institution and I still got in here. I think that most people, that's their situation, that's their case, so I don't think it's really a competitive advantage that much. It may give you a little bit something to talk about at your interview maybe, but I think that's still something that's a little bit far-fetched to be able to do. I hope that better answers what you were asking. Please clarify if it doesn't. That's a good point. I mean, I guess if it's like your home institution, let's say you're an undergrad and you want to go, and your undergrad has a medical school and you want to really, really want to go to that medical school, then maybe, yeah, start getting involved with that medical school, do research and different things like that. I think that that's could be one potential way to show interest in that specific school if it's your home institution. But I wouldn't go out of your way. Let's say you live in California and you want to go to John Hopkins. I wouldn't fly yourself across the country, do a gap year at John Hopkins specifically just to get into John Hopkins, because there's no guarantee that that's going to get you into their program, and make you competitively advantageous, just because you did research with a mentor. Unless that mentor is somebody that has a lot of pull. But this is, again, going to a lot of different factors that influence whether or not this is going to be a good plan. But if that, let's say that mentor just happens to have a lot of pull and you spend a year with them because you have a year to spare and you build a good connection with them, and then you end up applying to that medical school and they help you get in, and that's somewhere you really want to go. But that's another like extensive, that's another question. I think that's not necessarily your question, but that may be something that somebody may be interested in doing if they're very interested in a specific program. They have kind of similar concepts to that. When you're applying a residency, you do a selective or a way rotation at that school, at that program, try to kind of try out for it, and it makes you a little bit more competitive at that program. But as far as medical school, I don't think it's um, that intense unless you specifically really want to go to like your home institution or something where you're already there. Hope that helps. No problem. Happy to help. All right. Oh, another question. No worries. Um, done research since you were in high school. I'm really unsure of whether my research hours as a high school student count. Do you know if that counts? I think when it came to applying to medical school, I think one of the biggest things that they tell you is you can include things from high school if you've been continuously doing it since high school. So let's say you've been working at the same lab since high school, then yes, 100% you want to include the hours that you were doing in high school on your medical school application when you're applying. It definitely counts, especially if you started as a young high school student and you worked your way up in that lab. You want to show that. That shows growth, that shows evolution, that shows a long-term, longitudinal passion for research, and a long-term commitment towards and dedication towards that research lab. If you were doing a separate project or separate research lab in high school, and let's say that helped inspire you to continue doing research in college, and maybe that lab helped get you a connection or a letter of recommendation that got you into your current research lab, or a research lab that you got involved with in undergrad, then 100%. Being able to speak on something that you did as a high school student, especially if you did something like that as far as research over a long period of time, and it's something that helped introduce you to it, 100%, I'd say that counts. I don't know. There's specific things that don't really count. Like, let's say you played like a sport in high school, but it didn't really end up going anywhere. Maybe you could write it as like a like activity or hobby on your application. Like, I played I played basketball in high school, and I love basketball, and I use it as a way to give myself a study break and stuff like that. You could do that on your application to kind of incorporate high school things. Let's say but I wouldn't incorporate like high school honor society. That doesn't really count. Usually it's only things college and after. But if you're doing something long term like research, especially if the research is something that you started in high school and it really sparked your interest in medicine, sparked your interest in scientific thinking, 100%, you could definitely write about that in your application and show that this is something that you've had a commitment to for a very long time. But yeah, that's pretty impressive. I wasn't even thinking about research in high school. I was just thinking about making it to college. But yeah, that's really amazing that you've had that experience. No problem. Happy to help. Thank you for coming. So last, I want to just leave off a couple pieces of advice before I close out the stream, unless anybody has any other questions. One of the last things I want to talk about is just committing yourself. I always feel that half effort gives half response and half results. And when it comes to pre-med, leave a space in your schedule to do research. Don't take 1,000 credits and then try to add on research on top of that. What I would usually do is if I was usually taking 15 credits, I would maybe take 12 credits. If you're usually taking 18, maybe take 15. Dial it back a little bit to open up space for research, because they want to see that commitment. They want to see that dedication to the lab. And if you're only there sparingly because you have all these other things going on, then it doesn't really look good on your part, and you want to show that you're dedicated. And as far as medical student, I kind of answered this before. Find the time, make the time, and adjust your schedule accordingly. As a first year, you might not have as much time in your schedule because you're still figuring things out. You're still testing the waters. But as a second year, once you figure it out in the first year that I know this, I've done this, I'm capable of this, then you might be able to incorporate some other things into your regimen. And lastly, making connections and using connections to leverage is absolutely huge. You want to be able to build these long-term relationships with your mentors. You want to be able to build these long-term commitments to a lab, just because it helps. Again, the more people that are saying good things about you, the better. The more relationships, the more mentorship that you have, the better. They could give you advice not only on your life, especially if it's somebody like a physician and you're trying to be a doctor one day, you're trying to be a physician scientist one day, just like them, and you have a role model, someone to look up to, somebody to ask questions to. That's one of the best things that I've found from research, is mentorship from other students, mentorship from residents, mentorship from fellows, physicians, the whole nine. You have that connection. You're able to build those relationships by doing research, and you're able to leverage those different connections to get you into other research projects, or get into and meet with other people in different departments, or get a job, or whatever the case may be, get into residency. So these relationships are things that aren't just on the short term, and when it comes to applying to medical school or applying to residencies, these things that could take you a long, long way. And I think that that's one of the most impactful parts of research, not only getting to learn about a specific area of medicine or area of science, but also being able to build these long-term relationships and have these conversations and go back and forth and pick each other's brain on areas of special expertise and specialty. So that's all I have. If you guys have any lasting questions, the last few viewers that are in here, please speak now, forever hold your peace. But I'm going to wrap it up here in the next minute or so. Get back to my Sunday, get some studying in, grab some food, and kick it off for a week. This is, I think, week 5 of my first block of my second year. Appreciate everybody that came through. It was a good stream. Talked a lot about research. Hopefully gave some valuable advice for all of you that are out there. Again, it's not about the publications. It's not about, all that stuff. Figure out first what you enjoy, what you love to do, especially as a pre-med, what you enjoy learning about, get involved. Email as many people as possible to get involved, meet with people, prepare properly when you're meeting with them by reading their papers, understanding what they do, and then going from there, finding a lab that you enjoy, making the time to dedicate towards it, dedicating yourself, and then, eventually rising to the top, asking the right questions and thinking scientifically will take you a long way. Learning the entire process of research, not just data collection, not just data mining, but thinking about a research question, coming up with a conclusion, understanding how to do a literature review, and so on. All these things go a long way in being a successful researcher and publishing. And once you have all those skills, then publishing will be the least of your worries. If you find the right mentors that publish at a high rate, and you have the right opportunities around you, and you seek the right opportunities, you will publish. Publishing is not something that is very, very challenging if you have all the right pieces around you. You just have to work really hard, and you have to be really good and really efficient. But it all comes with time. It all comes with practice, and anybody can do it. I'm almost certain of that. So, but thank you guys again. If there's no lasting questions, I'm going to close out here. And yeah, I hope every one of you guys has a great time. And if you're watching this in the future and you weren't able to make the stream, hopefully you can make it next time. I'm trying to do more and more streams and more content for you guys. I've been really, really busy with school and research, obviously, but I'm trying to do my very best to provide you guys with some content, some advice. I love this streams because it allows me to answer questions in real time and give you guys some good feedback. But that's everything I have for you. And enjoy the rest of you guys' Sunday and enjoy the week. Peace out, guys.